This responds as the rebuttal to the argument that mental health should be a main focus over punishment in the criminal justice system. There are a few issues my counterpart brought up that I would like to discuss. The first issue I would like to address is that they mentioned that criminals are to be given the basic human right to health care, both physical and mental. This, however, in America is not even a basic right that many citizens of this country are afforded. There are roughly 31 million uninsured Americans that do not even have access to affordable health care, and it's estimated that 10% of those uninsured people have a mental illness of some kind. Criminals should not have easier access to mental health care services than these law-abiding Americans. The prescription medication that goes along with the mental health treatment in prisons is one of the major costs associated with it, and in one study done in 2015, it stated there was enough pills prescribed for depression inside state prisons to match every person in the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which has a population of over 160,000 people. Then what happens when these prisoners are released and no longer have access to free medication due to not being able to afford it, or not being monitored by guards all day to make sure they take their medication? The Eighth Amendment states that prisoners are not to be subjected to cruel and unusual punishment, and an important ruling by the Supreme Court in 1976 was Estelle v. Gamble, which the court ruled the prison system must not show deliberate indifference to the prisoner's medical needs, and are required to receive adequate and essential health care treatment. Prisoners receiving costly mental health counseling and prescription pills does not fall under the standard set. Prisoners should be allowed essential health care services, meaning that if they have a bone that is broken, it should be fixed. If they have a tooth that needs to be pulled, it should be pulled. And if they have a psychiatric problem that could cause them harm, that needs to be addressed, as it should be. But receiving expensive treatment for anything less would be a luxury in an institution that is not intended for that kind of treatment. There are already mental health standards in place in prisons that exceed essential and adequate standards set, and focusing more on this would only be costly to taxpayers. Another issue discussed is rehabilitation, and while I don't disagree with my counterpart that rehabilitation is an important part of the incarceration system, this should not be the main focus. Prisons are meant to be a punishment first and foremost. Along with that, there are already several rehabilitation programs in place in many incarceration facilities, including drug abuse treatment, basic educational services, and vocational services that provide for inmates to be successful in society when released. As I mentioned in the original debate, criminal malingering is a very real thing, and it can take a very trained eye to determine if someone has a mental illness. The prison medical system is not prepared to be a full-on mental rehabilitation clinic. Prisons are intended to not only be hard on the criminal physically, but mentally as well. Almost anyone that goes into a prison could claim they are depressed and is mentally damaging due to the conditions they are subjected to. There was also the claim that 78% of women showed signs of mental illness before being incarcerated, and 40% have been incarcerated after receiving treatment of some kind. If that many women were treated for mental illness and still chose to break the law, then why are we to assume that additional mental health care treatments while in prison would be any more effective than what they had before prison? Lastly, a topic that was discussed was that these criminals are not capable of knowing what they did was wrong, when in fact the vast majority of criminals are very aware of what they've done and why they are incarcerated. Unless we are talking about a juvenile detention center where children may still be developing, these adult prisoners do not need an expensive mental health care counselor to talk to them about how their crime was wrong. To conclude, this is a complex issue that will have strong opinions on both sides, but the rehabilitation programs that are already available, we do not need another expensive taxpayer-funded program of providing mental health counselors at the beck and call of prisoners. Thank you.